Kindness is often heralded as a universal virtue, a timeless beacon of humanity praised by ancient scriptures and modern philosophies alike. It is said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see." Yet the paradox of kindness, why it sometimes invites disrespect or exploitation, has long puzzled spiritual seekers and everyday individuals alike. This paradox is not unique to our age. Even the Buddha himself, a paragon of compassion, faced misunderstanding and ridicule. Through Zen teachings and Buddhist philosophy, we explore why kindness alone is insufficient and how the interplay of wisdom and self-respect creates balance. The paradox of kindness. Kindness, in its purest form, reflects the highest aspirations of human compassion. It acts as a bridge, fostering connections, alleviating suffering, and creating harmony. However, when kindness is extended without discernment, it can be misinterpreted as a sign of weakness. This misperception, rooted in human psychology and societal dynamics, has far-reaching consequences for those who aspire to lead lives of benevolence. Zen philosophy offers a profound insight into this paradox. Kindness unaccompanied by wisdom or boundaries becomes unsustainable and counterproductive. It risks enabling exploitation and fostering imbalance. The journey of a monk navigating these complexities highlights this essential teaching. The misunderstanding of kindness often arises from societal conditioning. In hierarchical settings, particularly those influenced by power dynamics, acts of kindness may be misread as submission. This misinterpretation is evident in the workplace, where overextending oneself can lead to being undervalued. Consider a scenario in which an employee, eager to help, takes on additional tasks. Initially celebrated, their generosity might eventually be taken for granted, resulting in burnout rather than mutual respect. Historical figures such as Abraham Lincoln exemplify the paradox of kindness. Renowned for his empathy and fairness, Lincoln navigated one of the most turbulent eras in American history with both compassion and unyielding resolve. His ability to temper kindness with decisiveness was instrumental in preserving the Union and advancing justice. Without the firmness to accompany his compassion, his leadership might have faltered under the pressures of opposing factions. Similarly, the story of the monk's journey provides a relatable allegory. The monk's acts of kindness, initially celebrated, gradually led to exploitation. The lesson here is clear. Kindness must be rooted in self-awareness and guided by wisdom. Otherwise, it risks draining the giver and emboldening those who exploit generosity. The story of the disciple within a serene monastery. A disciple prided himself on his acts of kindness. His day was filled with selfless deeds, assisting fellow disciples, sharing his food, and accommodating every request. Initially, his generosity garnered admiration. Over time, however, this praise turned into indifference, and worse, exploitation. Tasks were left undone for him to complete. His willingness to assist became a tool for others' convenience. Frustrated and disheartened, he sought counsel from his wise master. The master shared the allegory of the river and the forest. A river, generous to all, was taken for granted until it dwindled into a polluted stream. The master's wisdom illuminated the disciple's predicament. His kindness lacked the balance of wisdom and boundaries. Without these, his actions were not sustainable or empowering. The disciple's story resonates deeply, illustrating a universal human challenge: the fine line between altruism and enabling exploitation. The monk's initial approach reflects a common misunderstanding that limitless kindness equates to moral superiority. However, the reality is more nuanced. The master expanded his lesson, saying, "When a river flows unchecked, it may flood the lands it seeks to nourish. Similarly, your kindness must have boundaries that guide its course and prevent it from being wasted." The disciple began to understand that his kindness was akin to an overflowing vessel, well-intentioned, but spilling over without purpose. One day, the master tasked the disciple with observing the dynamics of the monastery. "Notice him," he said, "not just who benefits from your actions, but how they respond." The disciple complied, taking note of his interactions with others. He discovered that some disciples treated his kindness as an invitation to shirk their responsibilities, while others genuinely appreciated his efforts. This distinction revealed the imbalance in his approach. To help solidify the lesson, the master shared another allegory, the story of the tree and the gardener. A gardener lavished attention on a single tree, watering it constantly without considering the rest of the garden. The tree grew weak and dependent, its roots shallow because it never needed to reach for water. Meanwhile, the surrounding plants withered from neglect. Balance, the master explained, is not just about protecting yourself, it's about ensuring that your kindness nurtures rather than stifles. The role of boundaries are not barriers, but expressions of mutual respect. They allow kindness to flourish without exploitation. Zen teachings underscore this principle. When helping others, do not lose yourself. True kindness uplifts both the giver and the receiver. By setting boundaries, we teach others that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. Boundaries are essential in all aspects of life. In personal relationships, they prevent individuals from feeling overburdened or taken for granted. For example, imagine a friend who is always available to listen and support others. Without setting limits, this friend may find themselves emotionally drained, unable to care for their own needs. Establishing boundaries such as limiting the time spent on emotionally demanding conversations ensures that their kindness remains sustainable. In professional environments, boundaries are equally vital. A manager who takes on all the responsibilities of their team in the name of kindness risks not only their own burnout, but also the stagnation of their team's growth. By setting clear expectations and delegating tasks, the manager empowers their team to develop independence and accountability. This balance fosters a healthier, more productive workplace. Historical examples provide profound insights into the importance of boundaries. Take Mahatma Gandhi, whose kindness and compassion inspired millions. Despite his unwavering commitment to nonviolence, he set clear limits on what he could and could not accept. For instance, he rejected offers that undermined his principles, ensuring that his mission remained aligned with his values. His boundaries protected the integrity of his movement, allowing it to flourish. Boundaries also communicate self-respect. When we establish limits, we signal to others that our kindness comes from a place of strength rather than obligation. Oprah Winfrey, for example, is known for her generosity and willingness to help others. Yet she is equally renowned for her ability to say no to projects or opportunities that do not align with her values or goals. This balance allows her to maintain authenticity and focus her efforts on meaningful endeavors. The consequences of neglecting boundaries are far-reaching. When kindness becomes limitless, it may lead to resentment, fatigue, and a diminished capacity to give. Consider the story of a parent who constantly sacrifices their own needs to fulfill every demand of their children. While their intentions are noble, this approach can inadvertently teach dependency rather than responsibility. By setting boundaries, the parent not only preserves their own well-being, but also encourages their children to develop resilience and independence. Ultimately, boundaries ensure that kindness is purposeful and empowering. They transform giving into a mutual exchange of respect and care, allowing relationships to thrive without one-sided sacrifice. In Zen philosophy, boundaries are likened to the walls of a vessel. Without them, water spills and is wasted. With them, the vessel holds its contents, ready to nourish when needed. This wisdom underscores the transformative power of boundaries in elevating kindness to its highest potential. Kindness and the nature of people. People interpret kindness through their own lenses. Some perceive it as a virtue, others misinterpret it as submission or weakness. The Buddhist teachings remind us that human nature is shaped by perception. Discerning kindness requires self-awareness and a willingness to say no when necessary. This balance transforms kindness into an empowered act, free from exploitation. Human beings are deeply influenced by their own experiences and expectations. A person who has faced consistent kindness may come to appreciate it as a valuable trait, associating it with trust and mutual benefit. Conversely, someone who views life through the lens of power dynamics may see kindness as a weakness to be exploited. This dichotomy highlights the necessity of discernment. Take the example of Martin Luther King Jr., whose kindness and steadfast commitment to nonviolence were perceived as a strength by his followers, but as a vulnerability by his adversaries. His ability to pair kindness with resolute action ensured that his movement was respected rather than dismissed. King's wisdom lay in understanding the nature of people and using kindness as a tool to inspire rather than a trait to be abused. Similarly, in everyday life, individuals often encounter situations where their kindness is misunderstood. Consider a colleague who offers to help frequently, only to find themselves burdened with tasks others refuse to do. Without asserting boundaries, this kindness becomes a liability rather than a strength. However, when kindness is paired with self-respect and discernment, it fosters a culture of mutual respect and collaboration. Psychological studies reinforce this idea. Research on altruistic behavior suggests that people are more likely to respect and value kindness when it is delivered with confidence and balance. Acts of kindness that appear to stem from fear of confrontation or a desire for approval are less likely to garner genuine appreciation. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to reflect on our motivations for kindness. Are we kind out of compassion, or are we seeking validation? This self-awareness allows us to recognize patterns of exploitation and address them. By being willing to say no when necessary, we not only protect our own well-being, but also teach others to value kindness as a deliberate and thoughtful act. Leaders like Angela Merkel exemplify this balance. Known for her empathetic yet pragmatic approach, Merkel consistently demonstrated kindness while maintaining firm boundaries. Her leadership during the refugee crisis showcased compassion without compromising the stability of her nation, earning her both respect and trust. Ultimately, the nature of people requires us to adapt our kindness to different contexts. By pairing compassion with wisdom and maintaining clarity in our intentions, we ensure that kindness remains a force for empowerment rather than exploitation. This delicate balance transforms kindness into an active, respected virtue that uplifts both the giver and the receiver. The lesson of yin and yang. In Buddhist philosophy, the harmony of yin, softness, and yang, strength, is essential. Kindness embodies yin, but without yang, it risks becoming ineffectual. Conversely, strength devoid of kindness leads to cruelty. The disciple learned to integrate these opposing forces, creating a kindness rooted in wisdom and firmness. Yin and yang represent the complementary forces that govern the universe. Yin symbolizes gentleness, receptivity, and nurturing, while yang embodies strength, decisiveness, and protection. These forces are not opposites but interdependent, each requiring the other to maintain balance and harmony. In the context of kindness, this philosophy teaches that true compassion must be paired with assertiveness to be effective. A practical example of this balance can be seen in the leadership of Nelson Mandela. His yin was evident in his deep empathy and willingness to forgive, while his yang manifested in his unyielding commitment to justice and equality. This harmony allowed Mandela to lead South Africa out of apartheid with a vision that inspired reconciliation without compromising accountability. In everyday interactions, the absence of this balance often leads to extremes. A person who embodies yin without yang may become overly accommodating, struggling to assert their needs or set boundaries. On the other hand, someone who embodies yang without yin risks becoming overly rigid or harsh, alienating others. The disciple's journey illustrated this delicate interplay. His initial overemphasis on yin, kindness, left him vulnerable to exploitation, while his integration of yang, strength, enabled him to protect his well-being and direct his compassion effectively. The master taught the disciple that the balance of yin and yang could be cultivated through mindfulness. Before you act, he advised, ask yourself, does this action reflect both compassion and strength? Am I nurturing harmony or am I enabling imbalance? By practicing this reflection, the disciple began to embody a kindness that was both soft and strong. Historical figures like Eleanor Roosevelt also exemplify this principle. Her yin was evident in her advocacy for human rights and social justice, while her yang shone through her tenacity and ability to navigate the political landscape with resilience. Roosevelt's balanced approach ensured that her kindness was respected and her efforts impactful. Ultimately, the lesson of yin and yang reminds us that kindness is not a weakness, but a dynamic force. When paired with strength, it becomes a powerful tool for creating harmony and inspiring change. This balance allows kindness to transcend fleeting gestures, transforming it into a sustainable practice that uplifts both the individual and the collective. Incorporating personal stories. Throughout history, acts of balanced kindness have reshaped perceptions. Consider the tale of a Zen master who allowed his pupil to fall short in a task rather than stepping in. This act of restraint taught resilience and responsibility. Similarly, figures like Rosa Parks exemplify the power of deliberate kindness paired with strength. Her refusal to give up her bus seat was a quiet but firm act of defiance, teaching the world that kindness to oneself can inspire monumental change. In my own life, I recall an instance when a colleague continuously asked for assistance on projects. Initially, I felt obligated to help, but over time, I noticed that my contributions were enabling their complacency rather than fostering growth. I decided to set boundaries and encourage them to take ownership. To my surprise, they rose to the challenge, gained confidence, and eventually thrived independently. This experience reinforced the principle that kindness, when balanced with discernment, leads to mutual respect and growth. The power of boundaries and respect boundaries not only preserve personal energy, but also inspire respect. The disciple's decision to set limits revealed two outcomes: gratitude from those who valued his actions and anger from those who sought to exploit them. This duality underscores the human condition and the necessity of boundaries as a tool for self-respect. Boundaries are transformative. Consider Mother Teresa, whose life was dedicated to serving the impoverished. She set clear limits to focus her energy where it was most needed. Her ability to say no to requests that distracted from her mission allowed her to create lasting change. Similarly, leaders like Barack Obama demonstrated this principle by maintaining boundaries that preserved his ability to focus on significant issues despite countless demands on his time. Setting boundaries communicates self-respect. It sends a message that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. This approach fosters relationships built on mutual respect rather than dependency. When we set limits, we protect not only ourselves, but also the integrity of our kindness, ensuring it remains impactful and sustainable. The power of boundaries and respect boundaries not only preserve personal energy, but also inspire respect. The disciple's decision to set limits revealed two outcomes: gratitude from those who valued his actions and anger from those who sought to exploit them. This duality underscores the human condition and the necessity of boundaries as a tool for self-respect. Boundaries are transformative. Consider Mother Teresa, whose life was dedicated to serving the impoverished. She set clear limits to focus her energy where it was most needed. Her ability to say no to requests that distracted from her mission allowed her to create lasting change. Similarly, leaders like Barack Obama demonstrated this principle by maintaining boundaries that preserved his ability to focus on significant issues despite countless demands on his time. Setting boundaries communicates self-respect. It sends a message that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. This approach fosters relationships built on mutual respect rather than dependency. When we set limits, we protect not only ourselves, but also the integrity of our kindness, ensuring it remains impactful and sustainable. Practicing compassion without attachment. Compassion, when free of attachment, becomes an act of true selflessness. The Buddhist teachings warn against clinging to outcomes. By relinquishing the need for approval, one's actions are freed from external validation, creating inner peace. In this state, kindness is resilient against misunderstanding or exploitation. Consider the Dalai Lama, whose compassion is a beacon for millions. Despite facing exile and adversity, he practices compassion without attachment to outcomes. His teachings emphasize that true kindness arises from inner peace, not from a desire for recognition. This perspective empowers individuals to act from a place of authenticity, free from the burdens of expectation. Practicing compassion without attachment also allows for greater emotional resilience. When we are unattached to the results of our kindness, we can continue to give freely without becoming disheartened by unmet expectations. This approach transforms compassion into a boundless source of strength. The balance of giving and receiving sustainable kindness requires balance. Just as a river replenishes itself, a person's energy must be preserved. Self-care is integral to meaningful giving. The disciple's realization that depleted kindness serves no one illuminates this truth. In modern contexts, this balance is evident in the philosophy of philanthropists like Melinda Gates. Her work emphasizes not only giving, but also creating systems that empower others to sustain themselves. This balanced approach ensures that kindness is both effective and enduring. On a personal level, the balance of giving and receiving teaches us to value ourselves as much as we value others. When we neglect self-care, our capacity to help diminishes. Acts of replenishment, whether through rest, reflection, or seeking support, are not selfish but necessary for sustainable compassion. This understanding allows kindness to flow freely, like a river that nourishes its surroundings without running dry. The disciple's journey teaches us that kindness, balanced with wisdom and self-awareness, becomes a source of harmony and strength. As Zen wisdom advises, a tree that bends with the wind does not break, but one that bends too much loses its roots. By aligning kindness with self-respect, we cultivate a practice that inspires and uplifts,